couple of weeks back, I put out a little poll up on our community tab wondering just what lists you guys wanted to see next on this channel. And I should have known better. You sick, twisted sons of bitches would want this one. Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome back to another recommendation list. Yes, this time we're going to be discussing 5 of what I consider to be some of the most brutal horror films. And yes, I'm not just going to be talking about your, Serbian films, your, Irreversibles, and all the other ones that we know are inherently brutal films. No, I'm going a little bit deeper. I'm definitely personalizing it, as I like to do with my lists, and I'm going to talk about some films that I feel like don't get highlighted enough when you talk about brutal horror. So with that said, I just need to keep it out here and put it out in the open so that way I don't get ripped up in the comments for not including some of those films I mentioned. This is my list. These are just some picks that I decided to highlight, again, because some of them don't get talked about much. And if you have other opinions, that's perfectly fine, but these are just mine. And before we hop into the guts and gore, if you are new to this channel or you've been watching us for a little while and you have not hit that subscribe button, I would really appreciate it. We are on our way to 7,000 subscribers, and if we could get there before October, that would be incredible. So yes, if you could do that for me, leave this video a like and share it with your friends who are also looking for some brutal horror films to watch this upcoming October. It would mean the world. Coming in at number 5, we have 2014's Back Country. An urban couple goes camping in the woods and finds themselves lost in the territory of a predatory black bear. It's a very straightforward description for a rather straightforward film. Yeah, a couple goes camping and they just so happen to stumble into the territory of a very, very hungry, overly aggressive black bear. But why I'm including this film on this list specifically is because this is a film by Adam McDonald, who I just recently covered on the channel with his new film, Out Come the Wolves. And one thing that this film is pretty famous for is its bear attack scene. And yes, I know everybody likes to point towards The Revenant as being one of the most intense and crazy bear attacks in cinema. This, to me, kind of tops that, because what they're doing with this film is they're using an actual, real, trained black bear to, interact with our actors and the prosthetics and everything that goes involved with said scene. And I don't know, man, it just adds another level of intensity to this attack. Beyond that, it's absolutely brutal. Adam McDonald does not shy away from showing you just what ferocity these critters can kind of bestow upon just us little flesh bags when we're out in the forest. And it's a truly harrowing scene, and I gotta say, the rest of the film does an excellent job of playing this cat and mouse game between our lead actress and, of course, our black bear. And I really like this movie. I think it's a really excellent survival horror film. Does it find kind of a satisfying ending? No, I think it goes for a more realistic take towards the end of this film. I think that it's one of those things a little bit more, like we're gonna actually fight the bear, kind of like The Edge. You get some of it, but you're not gonna get all of that. I'm just putting that out there, because I've seen some people say that this movie after the attack scene is completely worthless. I don't feel that way. I feel like it does a great job of continuing to build suspense, and yeah, it will make you second guess jumping into a sleeping bag and spending your nights out under the stars. And again, it has to make the most brutal horror films list because that attack scene is one of a kind. And I urge you, if you have not seen the film and you are just curious to see like what you're getting into, you can look this thing up on YouTube, but if you do that, I encourage you to check out the rest of the film. Smashing and bashing its way into the number 4 spot, we have 2009's The Loved Ones. When Brent turns down his classmate Lola's invitation to prom, she concocts a wildly violent plan for revenge. This Aussie horror gem is from director Sean Byrne, and this is one that honestly, I saw a review for this on a channel called Pretty Much It back in the day. Some of you might remember them, but I was just so caught up in this, I had to track this thing down. It actually came to a Redbox near me, and I just remember renting this thing and just being like, wow, that was fucking intense. And definitely gives you as a young man who I was not in high school yet at the time, a little bit of a pause when it comes to maybe turning down invitations to prom. But take a look at me. I wasn't getting any invitations. I kid. I met my wife in 10th grade, so I had a date. Lucky me. Anyway, back into the film. This is honestly one of the most, like, satisfyingly brutal films for me, and I say that from a story perspective, because not only does this bring the, you know, intensity, the guts, the gore, the torture that you're kind of looking for in a very brutal horror film, but I love the setup here. I love the mystery that plays out for the loved ones. I think that, you know, when you're getting into this, just with that opening, you kind of don't know where the film's going to take you after that. And that is something that, of course, you look for in many films, especially horror films, is it to take you on a ride. But I just didn't expect the opening to kind of, you know, hit in that way. And then when we kind of traverse the story from then on out and everything starts to kind of, you know, link up and make sense towards the end, it is very, very satisfying. And I think that this is just one of those films that I love recommending to people, not only because I know they're going to be shocked by seeing people, you know, be threatened to be lobotomized with drills and things like that, but I think that it also really plays into an angle that isn't seen too often in a lot of films. And I know this isn't super common in horror. It's usually women who are put in peril, and they aren't the ones that are kind of inflicting it. So the fact that we kind of have this female antagonist and just what her and her father are up to, and just seeing the craziness that comes out of her, it's super intense, and it is one that I seriously do enjoy. And yes, it's extremely brutal. There are lots of sequences that will have you just kind of gritting your teeth and just wondering, oh my god, when is this going to end? But I'm telling you, there is a scene in this, there's a twist that comes up towards the, you know, end of the second act that is absolutely going to shock you. You're going to be like, holy crap, this movie just jumped to a whole nother level. And yeah, it's brutal, it's intense, it's well done. And yeah, this is also the director of The Devil's Candy, which if you have not seen that one, I highly recommend that as well. And yeah, this is just one that I absolutely adore. I love going back and rewatching it. Again, nobody seems to do it like Australian horror. Australian horror is something that I am head over heels in love with, and this is just another example of just how they're able to kind of push the envelope, but also remember to give us a good story with interesting characters. Moving on into my number 3 pick with 2023's When Evil Lurks. In a remote village, 2 brothers find a demon-infected man just about to give birth to evil itself. They decide to get rid of the body, only to end up unintentionally spreading the chaos. If any of you have been on this channel for at least a little while, you have probably heard me say that yes, this was my favorite film of 2023. I absolutely fell madly in love with Damien Rugna's film When Evil Lurks. I think that it's just intense, and it absolutely brings a different light, a different viewpoint, and honestly one of the most refreshing takes on the possession story that I have seen in ages. This is not necessarily what I was hoping for The Exorcist, but just the gusto, the guts to do something, you know, a bit more than just the stereotypical, you know, oh, you know, the power of Christ compels. They also do a lot of really fucked up shit in this movie, and I'm all here for it. There are multiple sequences in here that I know many people have loved to play the game of, hey, have you seen When Evil Lurks? How about that scene? You know what I'm talking about. And for those of you who don't want it spoiled for you, I am just going to put a little spoiler warning right here. I'm just going to mention it for a couple of seconds because I absolutely have to when we're talking about brutal horror films. 1, 2, 3, go. The dog scene. Holy fucking shit. I mean, yes, is it telegraphed to all hell? Can you know what's coming if you're paying attention? 100%, but it does not stop it from being extremely gut-punching, especially if you're a parent or you have like some nieces and nephews, just any small children in your area. If you love your animals, if you love your kids, it's a tough one. It is very, very intense. And it's not even just that, but there's a sequence later on where I will just keep it vague, even though this is a spoiler, but a mother is walking down the street with her young son, and yeah, she just was looking for some road snacks, I guess, because she just starts munching on the boy, and it's also quite gruesome. There's many other sequences in there that will also have you cringing and shockingly hiding your eyes from the screen. But it's a tough film, man. It's definitely brings the punches that you're expecting. And I 100% fell in love with this movie. It is one that I can go back and revisit at least once a year. It's only been out for a year, but I've watched it a couple of times since. And again, I love this film from multiple facets. But when we're talking about pure brutality in cinema, this is definitely one of the best, most recent outings when you just want to watch something that's going to just absolutely unsettle you. Traveling back down to the land down under for my number 2 pick, we have Wolf Creek 2. Yes, Wolf Creek 2. I know everybody loves Wolf Creek, but I have a very soft spot in my heart for 2013's Wolf Creek 2. The Outback once more becomes a place of horror as another unwitting tourist becomes the prey for a crazed, serial-killing pig hunter, Mick Taylor. Wolf Creek is an interesting series for me. This is one that, you know, when I was growing up was always talked about with your Saws and your Hostels as just being absolutely brutal and intense. And, you know, you'd hear about it on the playground, people being like, oh my God, this movie's crazy. And I never saw them. I didn't watch either the first or the second film thoroughly until last year. And I gotta say, I was fully engrossed in the first film. I thought that it was a very, very smart and cunning take on the serial killer, genre, especially setting it in a place like the Outback. It's just a wonderfully gruesome and brutal setting to set any horror film, in my opinion. But really, the heart of these movies and what really won me over was John Jarrett's Mick Taylor. I know that he's a piece of shit. I know that he's awful in every sense of the way, but God, is he entertaining to watch on screen. And I think that that goes full force here in Wolf Creek 2, because not only is this, I think, a more entertaining take on the material as to where the first one is definitely more grisly, more brutal in, you know, the more traditional sense. I feel like this one brings a lot more of the just the shine and tenacity that you look for in your Australian horror. And there's a couple of sequences that incredibly highlight that, and that is going to be the opening sequence with the two officers. I mean, good lord, he just knocks that dude's head completely out of this universe. And yeah, I thought that was awesome. And then those two poor German, I believe they were, tourists, oh my God, like, he rips that dude's head off, like, just cutting it and like taunting her with it. It's absolutely insane. And I always think back to this movie when I'm just talking about, like, again, brutality, but it's, again, brutality that I think is at least somewhat entertaining. I know I'm a sick piece of shit for saying that, but I think that this one has some more flair to it, some more interesting, serial killer-y kind of more traditional slasher vibes to it. And I just love this one. It's my favorite of all of the Wolf Creek, installments thus far. And I think that this is just one that I go back and watch time and time again. And yeah, they don't shy away from, the splatter in this film by any sense of the imagination. They show it all. And I will sit back and always come back to John Jarrett's performance being the draw for these films, but especially in this one. He's brutal, he's gruesome. You get to see kind of Mick Taylor in his elements once again, but going on a much broader scale than he did in the first film. Here we are, folks. We have arrived at my number 1 pick for the most brutal horror film that I can think of, that I absolutely love talking about and could recommend to you if you have not seen it, and that is going to 2015's Bone Tomahawk. In the dying days of the Old West, an elderly sheriff and his posse set out to rescue their town's doctor from cannibalistic cave dwellers. Listen, if there is something you don't know about me, it is that I have a major soft spot in my heart for Westerns. I adore Western films. I know that makes me sound like an old man, but there's something about the storytelling, the setting. Maybe just growing up with Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2 has just done something to me over the years that has made me just really gravitate towards that time period. I love when Westerns and horror films come together, and I don't think there's any better pairing of the genres than in 2015's Bone Tomahawk. And this is a film that, of course, again, if you know the channel, you know that we're going to be praising it because it's got our boy Kurt Russell in the starring role as Sheriff Hunt. And not only that, this has a very stacked cast with even Matthew Fox, Patrick Wilson, Richard Jenkins. I mean, there's even David Arquette in this film at one point. And of course, the late, great, must pay tribute to Sid Haig. Now, those latter two aren't in the film a whole lot, I will admit, but they are memorable for when they are on screen. But this movie, man, is absolutely gritty, and there is one specific sequence that, of course, takes the cake for everything in this film, and why I wanted to make this the film I talk about on this list. I will admit that this was my number one from the second I started this list, and it was tough kind of coming up with these. What they do to Deputy Nick in this movie when they get in that cave, oh my god, S. Craig Zoller and his effects team absolutely deliver on just the grit and the brutality of that kill. It is gut-wrenching and so tough to watch. Kurt Russell and Richard Jenkins, they absolutely deliver in just the anguish that they have when they're just watching their friend, their deputy, being cut to pieces by these cannibals. These, I guess they call them troglodytes. They're absolutely these monsters. They were the absolute brutal cave dwellers, as they call them. I put them a lot closer to the creatures from The Descent than I would like a human being, is basically what I'm trying to say. And I adore it. I think that this is just one of the best written, again, most brutal, and again, I love Westerns, and I love when they can infuse horror, and I don't think there's a single horror film that does it better than Bone Tomahawk. I adore this movie. I could talk about it for hours. I really want to do like a video essay just breaking down all of my favorite parts of this film, how it was pieced together, how it's written. And absolutely, if you have not seen this film, if you're not a big Western fan, but you are a horror fan, give this a shot. Just sit down, watch it, and I promise you it will deliver. It's not even just that scene with Deputy Nick. There's a lot of really intense and absolutely gut-wrenching kills and attacks in this film that they don't shy away from. This is an unrated movie, so they are not bound by any NPAA ratings boards. They just go for it, and it's perfect. I absolutely adore it. Well, there you have it, folks. That is 5 of what I consider to be some of the most brutal horror films out there. There are a ton more. There's a lot more that I could mention. I definitely had a few that kind of flip-flopped on the list, off the list. But hey, if you like this video, if we can get this thing up there, have it crush in the numbers on the channel, share it, get some more subscribers off of it, I'll gladly come back and talk more brutal horror films. There's a few that I absolutely adore, but I promise you, if you're looking for someone who's going to recommend things like Human Centipede, Serbian films, stuff like that, we're going to have to go through quite a lot before I can resign myself to putting that on any of these lists. Because again, those are just too easy. Those are the ones everybody expects. And yeah, they're brutal, but I'm always looking for a little something more with it. And I think that this list is, at the end of the day, my honest and true thoughts on what I look for out of brutality when it comes to horror. I gotta care about the characters. I gotta like the people that are getting murdered and mauled. Otherwise, it means nothing to me. Alrighty, guys, that's going to wrap it up for me here. We have a lot of great stuff coming up on the channel. We are prepping for Splatterthon. We have Fantastic Fest right around the corner. So yeah, lots to do, lots will come, and I'm glad that you decided to check out this video, and I hope you stick around for more. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell, and remember, stay scared.
Do the hard shit, gonna do it live, 'cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna slash your ass.